Okay, good evening, everyone. Today, we will start our February 9th, 2021 work session. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Christine Adamczyk,
Here.
Councilmember Linda Hammer,
Here.
Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky,
Present.
Councilmember Brian Nowak,
Present.
Councilmember Brian Polarski,
Present.
Councilmember Richard Rusiniak, and Supervisor Diane Benchkowski.
Here. Yeah, Rick will probably join us in a few minutes, so we'll just get started with the discussion items and just make a note at what time that Rick joins us. So first item of discussion, we're here to get a presentation about our new comprehensive plan. We have Brian Kalpa from Clark Patterson Lee, and Camille Brandon is here today, who was the chairman of the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. So Brian Kalpa and Camille, you have the floor.
Okay. Camille, did you want to?
No, actually, yeah, so I can just introduce real quickly. So by resolution of the town board, a comprehensive steering committee was formed in the town of Cheektowaga. So our first meeting started October 2019. And since then, we've had 10 meetings, we've had 2 public hearings, and we've done 2 town surveys. So we have tried to incorporate all the thoughts and all the discussions and all the input that we received from the committee members and that we received from the town surveys and that we received from all the members on the committee, who, by the way, the committee is comprised of residents from the town of Cheektowaga mainly. There are some members of the town of Cheektowaga who are on the committee. There were a couple board members who also participated. But the main purpose of the committee was to get the input from the people who live in the town, to see what the assets are, to see what maybe whatever the things were that they wanted to move forward with. So with that being said, I'd love to introduce Brian Kalpa, who is no stranger to the town of Cheektowaga.
Thanks, Camille.
All right. Okay, well, thank you, Camille. The committee's been great to work with so far. I know that several of you as board members have kind of come through different committee meetings at times, and I thank you for that. The project, just to refresh everybody's memory of this, the town had an unadopted comprehensive plan a while back, about 10 years, a little more than that. And that over that decade, sort of the world changed a couple times. So we started looking at the plan that was and the direction the town wanted to go. And over the course of the past year, the world changed a couple of times as well. So, I'm glad, I'm not glad that COVID happened, but I'm glad that the comp plan happened to be in process when COVID happened, because certainly the stresses and strains on the economy, the changes in what we see economically that have been facilitated by the COVID crisis has going to have lasting impact on all of our communities. And, fortunate, I guess, in a way that this comp plan happened to be underway already, but not completed, because means we could adapt to that. And we're in the process of still adapting. We anticipate hopefully getting a draft over to all of you for your eyes next week. But I wanted to come and talk a little bit about what's in there content-wise and see if we're missing something that the town board would like us to look at. And hopefully we have a well-rounded overall set of things. And we'll be happy to answer some questions without hopefully chewing up too much of your work session today. But I do thank you for this opportunity. So can I screen share? I don't, if I have that
Madam
capacity.
Clerk, she has to give you the permission.
Okay,
Madam Clerk?
if you would.
You should be good, Brian.
Okay. Now I have to do this correctly on my end, which is always, can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So, the comprehensive plan, as we've looked at it this year, it starts to look at a couple of items. We use placemaking, and when we say it's intentionally blurry, by the way. So, I realize when you're presenting online that, but multifaceted approach that frames the way the public space is viewed, right? So we're talking about wanting people to interact with the community assets and opportunities for inspiration, and ultimately with the goal of providing a healthy environment that creates a good sense of place. And that sense of place is kind of what we're after. As we talk about any specific area in Cheektowaga, we want you to remember the space, right? And certainly memorable spaces are created and also sort of originate organically. And what this is meant to do is meant to provide you a framework for all that type of stuff to happen. So we're trying to gather a vision for the future and create a baseline for a policy guide. Within that baseline, we're going to look at the town. We've looked at the town, or are looking at the town in its entirety. We're looking at land use. We're looking at transportation. Of course, looking at demographics, housing, community services, and zoning. And zoning is outcome of land use, but it also is a framework for land use. So I don't need to tell you your history, but this is it's a town that really saw expansion post Civil War as the railroad grew up, and as transportation diversified, it took on different states of being. And it's really kind of post World War II that saw this kind of heavy development of a lot of your track housing in the interstate system, which good, bad, and indifferent all define the town and define the town geographically. So ultimately, right, your profile, this is not, I will get new census data soon. Because we've just completed a census, but this is representative census data. It's modeled off of the last census. A population of 74,673, a median income of 48,994, a vacant housing units, a decrease in vacant housing units, and living below the poverty line has increased. So some interesting things happening. One of the things that we really took note of were your relationship with I think this is correct, but I always scratch my head about school districts and schools, parks, recreation facilities, two major rail yards and rail corridors, of course, the airport, and really sort of pronounced youth and senior services components to the town. So as we look at the land use, about 88.9% of the parcels within town are residential use. I know that seems hard to grasp in terms of a number, but of course, residential parcels are so much smaller than a lot of the commercial parcels. So where your area is different, but overall parcel quantity is heavily residential. 4.2% of the parcels are vacant, or our display is vacant on county GIS. And they make up about 12.9% of your town's acreage. So we've got some vacancy to attend to. And commercial parcels, and again, that's parcel quantity, only make up about 4.8%. So there's some other big infrastructure components up there that obviously grab a lot of your land. So where we are in a process or in a timeline right now is we're about to hand over draft plans. We've got some review and final plan work to do with this board. And we'll be presenting once more, I think, to the committee, Camille, and then we'll be moving and working directly with this board so that we can continue the hard work of making sure the plan is fully adopted. But this is a little bit of a sense of things we've heard through a lot of survey work and what we've seen. There's a question about affordable housing. How can we sustain affordable housing? How can we expand options for affordable housing? When it comes to green space, we've heard a lot about how can we increase the town's green footprint? What can we do to add green? We've talked about desirable streets, basically curb appeal of the town, but also pedestrian, bicycle, and transit development along those streets, and ultimately with the youth. How can we turn youth into stewards in our community? So this is a little bit of a snapshot, right, of kind of towns that aren't as big as Cheektowaga in terms of quantity, but maybe match some of the income demographics. And certainly there's a couple of pieces here that, we want to take note of, mainly kind of targeting the poverty rate, but also understanding that in some cases you're actually doing well with your balanced demographics. Town of Greece is already up over 21%, over 65. You seem to have a little bit more of a balance there. Certainly, we want to make this town very attractive to young families. That tends to be a key demographic, but we want to do it. And what we've heard from the community a lot is that we've got to do that in a way that allows for age in place capacity for your seniors, right? We don't want seniors to just have to leave the town. But I want to look at the youth component for a minute because I think it's interesting. Right, this is was prepared back in January 17. I really found this to be a really great study that was prepared by the National Retail Federation and IBM at the time as partners. And it's called Uniquely Gen Z. So, right, one of the things we've been always trained as planners to deal with are millennials. And millennials were this big generation of people, and they were going to change the dynamics of our environments. And I work with a lot of millennials in my practice, and I have millennials in my family that I always like to pick on. But millennials they've landed, right? They've picked their professions. They've more or less chosen where they're going to live. They still make me scratch my head about their lifestyle sometimes. But at the end of the day, what's behind millennials is this Generation Z. And Gen Z could range from kids that are, in preschool all the way up to kids who are just entering the workforce now. Hard to believe that this group's entering the workforce, but this is the generation that we see. And in many ways, it's different than the millennials. Millennials had the internet really kind of take on its pronounced shape and form during their lifetime. Gen Z was born with a lot of these kind of commodities. And when we look at what Gen Z means to us as communities, I think it's important to kind of acknowledge where they already are in terms of overall household spending, what they do in terms of where they spend their time, and this was back in 17. So you can imagine with COVID that these numbers may be even a little more out of whack. But online, it's pretty interesting. 74% of free time is online. And I can tell you from my kids that a lot of that's pretty true. And that mobile smartphone and now I think the laptop computer's probably given a little bit of way to a tablet over the past couple of years. But the point is, this is a multimedia crowd. And the reason why I think all of this is important is to remember, at the heart of what we're doing as communities are trying to prepare our communities for the next generations to want to invest in, to want to be in, to want to grow up in, to want to live in, to want to start families in. So, we've got to be adaptive. This was a great look at availability, value, and experience. 56% of people said they want the store experience to be fun so they don't get bored, right? So, and I think you can see that in some of the stores that kids like shopping in, Target, those types of things, they've catered to that. This has to be entertainment retail. And that changes a lot of perspective as your community has a lot of retail investment. So there's just, they're interesting. It is a background kind of way of saying that you got this entrepreneurial class, 16% of whom are already working for themselves. We've never seen a generation of business startups as young as this generation has. And what that translates to, I think ultimately is, right, we've got a lot of youth who are extremely technically savvy in our communities, who are well placed in terms of technical capacity, and it's up to us as urban planners and as municipalities to sort of provide the infrastructure, the spark, and hopefully the job creation and the way of life that people are looking for. One of the big things that's come out of COVID is this increase in park usage and park consumption as people push to get outdoors. Of course, you've got 437 acres of parkland. There's, I think, 12 different public parks, and we're looking at all those parks. With the committee, we looked at every one of those parks and kind of went through and looked at what could happen at those parks over time. Should the parks change? Are there adaptations, the committee would like to recommend to the town board, and how should we, best proceed with those? A lot of time it was about vegetative coverage. Sometimes it was about adding a specific type of recreation component to them. A lot of times it was about maintaining what's there. Sometimes it was about, hey, can we expand and change things? But ultimately, a lot of this was about inventorying some really great green space and ultimately creating some opportunities in those green spaces. This is Kelly Park, borders the creek. And are there ways that you can change the sort of the creek alignment so that maybe there's green infrastructure or rain garden projects, vegetative plantings, things that might add a little bit of intrigue and add some opportunities for some natural investment in terms of native species plantings. Same with North and South Creek. Talking about, the whole stretch of that creek basically is having opportunities to maybe naturalize the creek bank a little bit. Obviously, we have to be careful of flooding and those types of considerations. But Stiegelmeyer Park, was extremely well received. Some of the interventions that we've talked about, with the committee that you'll be seeing have a range, right? Some of them are about creating different vegetative covers, different spaces with different plantings, getting away from sort of manicured lawn to start and talk about, pollinator gardens and native species plantings. Some of what we've discussed have to do with, just different ideas on what it means to be in a park, right? I frankly don't know where the one on the left is from. And it looks kind of outlandish, but at the same time, I'm relatively sure that my family could sit there for hours on end. The type of thing that you see, on the right, obviously, just places to relax, places to sit, but adding different opportunities or different values. These are just a couple of examples. Some of what we talked about was, you can get anywhere from adding, urbanized, sand volleyball to taking what would maybe normally be asphalt and concrete and trying to soften it, turn the seating areas into something that are a little more naturalized. maybe adding a couple of spray features here and there. They don't have to be a full splash pad, but just simply misters or spray fountains that people could play in or be around, and how the environments of parks can change and adapt to us and to people's interests. Active recreation in the form of sort of themed playgrounds and I skipped past that a little too quickly, so I apologize. And what it means to put down sport court and basically have bicycle tracks. It's easy to get kids involved and active when they see something that's cool and special and different. Ultimately, some of that stuff doesn't have to take a huge lift. It's just a matter of using materials that we already use quite a bit, and then just kind of focusing on enhancing the availability and the feel of availability to people, because you have parks that are intertwined already, and getting people to continue to value those places. So the plan goes beyond parks, though. It talks about zoning and density. We talk about design standards and allowing for sustainable retrofitting options, and identifying ways to make accessible and walkable communities. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of a hint at what some of that means. There's a lot of different ideas out there about how to do some of this. We look at communities around New York, upstate New York, and what different groups have taken on. For town of Glenville actually adopted a landscape manual allowing for landscape design standards to be set throughout the town. That may be extreme. Design standards are one thing. Landscape design standards could be a little arduous, but the idea there is basically you're saying, look, there's a minimum of what we're looking for in development and redevelopment and how you maintain your properties. So a couple things that we've looked at: the town heavily relies on residential tax yield as a source of income. That's no surprise. Every town in Western New York does. And it has an aging housing stock and a declining median income and then declining in aging population. So again, typical of Western New York communities, there's long-term and short-term solutions to help mitigate and reverse some of those trends. And I think some of it starts with breaking our practice of single-use, single-pattern development. So one of the things to kind of look at, right, is the sort of sense of post-war development here. What did it mean? What did development do here in the town of Amherst? First time, only time I promise I'll do that. It's so easy. But the reality is that there was a push to live in suburbs and a need for post-war housing. The banks in the nation were involved in redlining. There's no way, shape, or form around it. And there was a highway construction boom that sort of cut up communities. As that happened, we started valuing the automobile and started spreading out our housing and our communities so that we ended up very automobile reliant. And a lot of our streets and places of business reflected that and still do reflect that auto-centric universe. Ultimately, that has its benefits, but it also has its detractions and negatives. So one of the things that we are looking at right now across a lot of different communities, right? So this is the 33 where it comes into underpass it and connection to Union Road. But one of the things that we look at is, okay, what do places like this mean to our neighborhoods, right? So this neighborhood, is reliant upon Genesee Street and Harlem as its primary business area, or Union as its primary business area. And as you can imagine, the primary business area isn't necessarily how we used to develop main streets. So it doesn't have a walkable nature to it. It's not very adaptive to to people of all ages. It's not very adaptive to a lot of things. It's purely driven by kind of an automobile. At your core, right, sort of the heart of the town, your commercial district, which includes the Galleria Mall, the Thruway Mall that had been converted to a plaza. You see, you've got these large land spreads and these big footprints. So this is pretty much a car-centric area, and all of your sort of major commerce sector, with the exception of stuff by the airport, the major commerce section of the town of Cheektowaga is pretty spread out, and it's not very compacted. But it does allow for some interesting opportunities for infill development as people start to look for pedestrian-centric opportunities. So we're looking at a couple of different things. First is kind of how to start in re-envisioning roads. 12-foot drive aisles were set up basically around a way to keep large trucks and semis moving at a 35, 40 mile an hour clip. If we bring the travel lanes down to 11 feet, they can still accommodate those larger vehicle platforms, but we slow vehicle volume down significantly. We slow vehicle, not volume, but we slow vehicle speed down significantly. It also takes the same 52 foot road width and allows us to start to reimagine what a road construct might look like, including bike lanes and buffer lanes between the bike lane and a larger street tree boulevard with grass. And obviously 5-foot sidewalks and 11-foot minimum landscaping are nice functions to have. But I'm going to tell you that, ultimately they add value to the buildings around it. Where possible, we advocate for actually pulling the buildings closer to the sidewalk and making a truly walkable area, including an 8-foot park aisle with shared bike travel lanes. We'll have a little bit of mapping that you're going to see in the comprehensive plan for some recommended areas for street and road diets, including taking on some of those state and county arterials, in spite of them not being controlled by the town, so that as the state reconsiders those roads over time, they have to take into account context-sensitive design and look to see what the town desires are. So this one's not a finished graphic, but I grabbed it off of Dan Young's desk fast enough to include today, just because I liked where it was going. And Genesee Street's actually a street that DOT is looking at as a road diet option right now. And as you can see, right, this is a traditional post-war tract housing development on the, I guess would be the south side. The north side, of course, is cemeteries for a good portion of the road. And you can see there's bus stops and needs for people to access that north side and be able to walk along the street. But the street doesn't take into account a lot of opportunity for that. So this was just kind of a quick sketch, and you can see the street the alignment's not finished yet, but it pulls away and it kind of shows like, hey, even with that hedge line there, with the right road diet, the street can take on a full different idea and different purpose. The second one's a little bit more polished, albeit there's still works in progress. This is Harlem at the town park, right? So already this is a fairly walkable street because you have the park on one side. There's some business density and some residential stuff going on the other side that allow people to traverse the street. It's not that hard. What it's missing is some street trees and some buffers. But I would argue that there's portions of Harlem where you can get way up to speed too fast, and the volumes aren't necessarily there to support it. And this is, again, just a thought of what Harlem could look like in front of a town park in the future, without changing the alignment of some of those buildings, just by sort of changing the way we vision the street and what we could do with that amount of surface if we got creative. Then there's some other ideas, right? So as we look at like the Walden corridor, putting in design standards to make it easier for development to vision how that corridor could be redeveloped, taking into account like the Harlem corridor, what could happen if buildings started being developed to the street with parking behind them in the future as redevelopment occurs. Ultimately, this is kind of an idea, a work in progress about how to retrofit some of those bigger commercial sites so that we only have one drive aisle coming in, internal parking with the building splayed to the outside. This is kind of an example of what that could look like from the ground. And this could be, this could take shape almost anywhere where we have big box retail that needs to be retrofit. It's this sort of lifestyle center, this mixed use center. It doesn't need to be huge, massive stories. It can be 2 stories, 3 stories. But if we start to treat the arterial correctly, we could still park plenty of cars. The difference is instead of parking them in front of a Target, right, we can internalize the parking and line it with smaller businesses. As we look at businesses, retail is becoming smaller footprint. It's changing sort of the nature that people want to interact with retail. So there are a lot of different ideas out there about this. This is one thing that we're playing with some of your retrofit. And when I talk about going to 2 to 3 stories as retrofit, that means adding apartments or office space above. So this is a slide that I stole from Joe Minicozzi in Urban 3. He uses this slide in all of his presentations, giving him a lot of credit here. Hopefully I won't end up on his negative side for this, but I'm going to cite his work. He looks at land consumption, right? So a Walmart, for instance, this one in Asheville, South Carolina, consumes roughly 34 acres of land. And it generates property taxes per acre of about $6,500, which really isn't all that much tax per acre. It's like $47,000 in tax yield per acre that the city gets. And then, but it has 0 residents per acre and creates about 5.9 jobs per acre. Because again, it does create gross tax value and it does create gross jobs, but it takes up so much of your land that it makes it difficult to generate true value on each foot of acreage versus a downtown building, right? In this case, it's certainly multiple stories, and I'm not advocating for you to start building 6-story buildings, but the tax yield per acre, the residents per acre, the jobs per acre jump drastically when we start talking about multi-story, multi-use facilities and multi-use buildings. And ultimately, again, you've got land that certainly can fit into the retrofit. We've talked with Benderson and talked to Pyramid as part of our work, along with Rick Coburn and your building department. And Pyramid specifically kind of acknowledges that the shape and form of the Galleria Mall is going to change, and they may be looking to infill and add density. So what we talk about in the comp plan is kind of what has to happen to support that, right? So there's a couple of examples of density infills that are areas that reminded us a little bit of Cheektowaga, maybe without the palm trees. This isn't a good week to talk about global warming, but who knows, someday, right? But this is an area that, a lot of these buildings are new buildings. The road got redone, and the area kind of grew up from what was this sort of burned out, sort of old school strip plaza set to, a really lively street and a character kind of center of town. Detroit, Michigan, right? These aren't all examples from California and places like that. Some of them are, Detroit's pretty repressed as a city. But that's the sort of vision that they're looking forward to, right? This is this idea that, look, we're going to start changing our street geometries so that we can impact development in areas of town that have more or less been sort of this kind of ghost of retail past. Grand River Boulevard in Detroit, that's the sort of town envision, how that place might densify. And you've got a lot of opportunity here. The Galleria is still an Apex mall. It's still the go-to place. You've got good park systems. You've got natural elements. You've got the airport. You've got great transportation and logistics. So when we look at the heart of the town, what we've spent some time looking, again, this is another example. This one's from Shaker Heights, Ohio. That's actually, right, this is sort of vision to reality. You can actually see that church steeple in the background. But how a place can infill and create patterns of infill. This is one of those like internal circulation areas. Again, internal circulation inside of facilities. That's actually a 2-story space. It's got kind of a town built on top of a town in Liberty, which is cool. It's got its, but that kind of activity and lively street face. In order to really get the Galleria to move in those directions, in order to get some of those strip plazas along Union Road and Walden start to transform, you've got to undertake some real rezoning. You've got to go, start talking about a form-based zoning, making it easy for development to come in and be creative with their blend of use opportunities. We've got to push the state to correspond with investments in their infrastructure, in their roads, to match the sort of zoning. And ultimately, I'm advocating for, in the comp plan, a GEIS, or a generic environmental impact statement, that will allow developers in that area to move forward with projects without having to go through the arduous steps of seeker, that they could, conform to the environmental impact statement with the zoning, make it as easy to or as opportunistic as any redevelopment in Western New York, because they could short form seeker and they would be able to have zoning that's outright. So the comp plan points to next steps as sort of undertaking that rezoning, undertaking a GEIS in those areas. The sort of green blocks are the massing stages of infill, right? So the other graphics I was showing you, we want to take those kind of graphics now and overlay them on some of these green blocks and talk about, ways that, Galleria Boulevard, or, some of those places might become a little bit more hospitable to pedestrians, more hospitable to mixed use areas that we could see sort of redeveloping and redefining based on, our parking standards and throughout Western New York, and your parking standards as a town were built on, sort of major Black Friday, right? The worst case scenario for parking. And that no longer exists. It really doesn't. It didn't exist before COVID. It really doesn't exist post-COVID. So now's the time to start thinking about how that area, the heart of the town, can start to reinvest. This is the platform that that's a Walmart with a Starbucks in front of it. This is the platform that they're starting to look at for stores in the future, because they understand they can't really, exist as single footprints. And retail in general is changing, and more retailers are looking at mixed use opportunities. So that's the sort of, that's a very abbreviated look at what is a much more in-depth document, but I wanted to give everybody a sense of some of the component pieces. So there'll be, as I said, a overlay area that shows the sort of center of town. There's neighborhood pockets that were identified by the committee, places like Harlem and places like Pine Ridge. We've had recent conversation that still has to get pulled in here with Phil and Maria to talk about the direction the college looks to go. But ultimately, we see a lot of opportunity. And then the last thing that I don't touch on in the PowerPoint, but we certainly are touching on inside the comprehensive plan, is the need to look at zoning to really harness the town's transportation capacity for e-commerce facilities, not just the Amazons of the world, but the Wayfairs, a lot of these fulfillment centers that are looking for I would call stepped up blue collar jobs, blue collar with some technical capacity bordering in white collar, and transportation logistics jobs. So that has more to do with your kind of freight areas. And that's another component that we're going to make some suggestions about what zoning should look like to harness that sector. So I'm out of breath. Hopefully I didn't overshoot my time too much. I apologize. It's a lot to get in. But I do hopefully I have a little bit of time for questions or comments.
Yeah,
And
Brian, I'm very impressed. I loved all these new ideas and the vision for the town. And Camille, thank you so much. And I know Councilmember Nowak has been a big part of being on the steering committee. Not sure who else was there, but does anybody have any questions for Brian? Can you send us that PowerPoint by any chance too?
Yeah, I'll make it's probably the easiest thing is to make a PDF out of it, and
Yeah,
then
if
you
you
could
could,
post it.
whatever. I mean, you could just send it to us like that. I liked some of the vision and the pictures.
Yeah, we can send a PowerPoint format. It's a little
It's
big,
fine,
so I
just
might
like
throw it
that.
on.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think because I just wanted to, look at some of the statistics you had on there also, which I thought was interesting. So anybody else have any questions for Brian?
Just briefly, any questions, comments I have, I'll share offline with Camille and Brian Kolpa to give the rest of the board a chance to speak.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Anybody else?
Yeah, great presentation, Brian. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really
Long
liked all the
overdue.
I look forward to getting you, your hands on the first drafts, and like I said, it's mailable. So we want to make sure we get over the next month, we stitch this thing up to where you're really, happy with the product. So
Yeah, I am. I'm very, very excited. We've waited so long for this, and hopefully it'll give us some opportunities for funding to get some of these developments in place. So,
Brian, what kind of time frame would this stretch out to be? When you look at this,
So
over
we
20 years, 30 years, 40 years?
So yeah, when we talk about comprehensive plans, we usually talk about 1 decade to 2 decades, right? So it's traditionally a 20-year comp plan. But I tell communities you should plan about a decade in advance, and then after 10 years, you should reevaluate your comp plan because just so much changes in 10 years' time. But the transportation stuff, it start to finish, it takes about 6 years to really force the change on a state arterial if that's a direction you decide to go. And if you're trying to do multiple arterials, that's like 12, to 15 years of transformation. It takes a while, and I know it sounds like, hey, we're talking about something that's 20 years out, 10 years out. There's stuff that can happen immediately, right? Investment in parks, transformation of some town roads, those types of things, zoning and stuff like that can happen sooner than later, 1 year, 2 years. The big thing is getting started and getting started heading towards the vision, because once you've started, you build momentum. And so, you've got Pyramid already saying, hey, we're looking to be in redevelopment business here. We want to continue to add to our tax base near the Galleria. And Benderson saying we're content with our positions and our holdings. We'd like more diversity of our portfolio. Great. There's a great place to start. Start with zoning work. Those developments may take years to recognize, but this is really an opportunity to lay the groundwork for stuff to come. So it's a balance, but it's a 20-year outlook. And like I said, if COVID had happened next year instead of this year, I would tell you we have to reevaluate some of those standpoints. But because COVID's going on right now, we're already learning about the emerging economy and direction things are heading. So
true. Well, thank you, Brian and Camille. Nice job, and we're looking forward to hearing from you again and getting the draft plan. So,
All right, thank you, everybody.
great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Very
How
good
do
job.
do I have to return host services to somebody, or how do I do that? Relinquish that?
Madam Clerk?
No, you're all set, Brian. You can,
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, so we also tonight have Pat Bowen, Mark Crystal, and Brian Kraus are going to talk to us about our challenges with the DEC consent order and some of the bonding we need to do and expenses and plan and so Pat Bowen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start out. And I apologize, I don't have a nice PowerPoint presentation like Brian did. And the subject isn't quite as glamorous either.
No, it
About
isn't.
sanitary sewer. So as you guys all know, we're under the consent order with the DEC. And back in October, we had under the revised Schedule A of the consent order, we were required to submit a corrective action plan to the DEC. They're mandating basically under the consent order that we address the public and private side of I&I so we can eliminate our sewer overflows. And to date, we've been focusing all our attention on the public side. Now we need to start addressing the private side. So as part of the corrective action plan that was submitted in October and has been conditionally approved, we proposed conducting a pilot program in our sewer shed 3. Under the consent order, we took our sewer district and broke it up into 10 sewer sheds. What we're proposing to do under the corrective action plan is within sewer shed 3, we would be rehabbing all the sewer lateral connections. We're going to look at 3 different methods and evaluate the effectiveness of each method. And the other part of it is to conduct inspections at all the properties within that sewer shed to try and eliminate the sources of I&I on private property. So that's kind of where we're at. Mark Crystal has he spent a lot of time putting together cost estimates for some of that work. So I'll turn it over to Mark at this point.
Okay, Mark.
Sure. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, just to follow up on what Pat was saying earlier, I mean, this corrective action plan is nearly 4 years in the making. Our timeline, 2015, is when we first got involved with the DEC with our consent order. So this document has been a long time back and forth with the DEC with their comments, their recommendations to get to an approvable point. So a lot of time and effort was spent to get to this point, which is a good thing. They did give us some pretty stringent timelines on this report. I attached that to the email I sent to the board last week. I'm sure you guys had a chance to read that. So a lot of items on here, they're looking for a response back to them from us by March 1st, which doesn't leave us a lot of time to get everything in order. But once again, there's 2 major pieces of this component, which is going to be the construction side and then the inspection side. Hence the 2 attachments I also sent to you guys. So like Pat said, targeting the areas in shed number 3, we're looking at approximately $5.5 million to do that. Okay, that's the construction cost. I'm just going to round it up to $6 million just because these costs were formulated last fall. Moving forward to get construction started early of next year. Again, just to use a round figure, I'm going to call it 6 because of components and how we're going to meet the goals of getting that construction done. The other was the inspection side, which again has been a topic of discussion for the last 5 years from when we started this order with the DEC. There's a lot of things we need to do internally and externally. That's why there's some dollar figures of upwards of $500,000 associated with getting this inspection work done. As you guys are aware, I mean, our time is limited with the inspectors we have, so it's a big heavy lift from them. So these are the 2 pieces we need to discuss to get this plan moving forward. Unfortunately, it's a big ask for the town. It's a lot of dollars we're talking about to get this work done in 1 sewer shed, with the idea that most likely we're going to have to go town-wide once we're done with that. But again, it's something we need to respond back to them here shortly. Wanted to bring it to the board's attention. It's a lot of dollars involved in this, but once again, it's something, it's a need and not a want from our perspective. So that's why we wanted to come today to talk about the dollars and make sure everyone's on the same page us moving forward with this next piece of our consent order.
Do you want to go through the figures or anything, or Anybody have any questions for Mark so far? I
And
know
actually,
Brian
Diana,
Crow-
this
Go
is,
ahead,
Pat, I would like to add that our hope or our intent is when we're done with this pilot study, we'll know what we'll be doing with the rest of the sewer sheds. And our
Mhm.
plan is to apply for grant funding and help offset some of the costs for some of like the lateral rehab and so forth.
Oh, that's true. We were gonna try to package some of this. And
Right.
we met with Connie Miner, our new grant writer, and she felt there was a way we could do this to apply for the next grant. So that was a good point, Pat. Thank you.
Exactly, Diane. Just to follow back on that, we were very successful back in our very first phase of our public side work. The town issued a $12 million bond, which we went to work and started that process. Then, based on our findings, we were very successful to leverage $35 million worth of grant work. So hopefully, can't guarantee it's going to happen again, but we're going to build this thing the same way that we can get some work started, find some findings, and then have some good data to report back, which will hopefully score us well to get some additional dollars. So we're going to approach it the same way. Can't guarantee it's going to happen, but we're going to structure this the same exact way as we've done in the past successfully.
Mhm.
I just wanted to ask you, Mark, where is sewer shed number 3?
That is in our town park area, Linda. So basically Harlem to Walden up to Genesee Street and then East Sullivan. So it's a part of the city line area near town park.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mhm.
I had a question for Mark. So doing sewer shed 3 as a pilot, are you anticipating taking what you learn here through the rest of the town, and do you have a sense of it being easier in some other areas or being more challenging in some other areas because of the town park area being one of the older neighborhoods in town?
Well, quite honestly, Brian, Town Park Shed 3 is going to be one of the challenging areas. Okay, so the reason we chose Shed 3 is the existing work is already completed. All the mainline lining is done, the manhole rehab work is done. So this is one of the few sewer sheds we have where all the all the private public side work has been completed today. So moving forward, I anticipate it to be very similar, hopefully less evasive because we're dealing with a little bit more of a non-age housing stock, okay? So moving forward, I don't anticipate anything worse than what we're gonna experience now, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. So I'm looking at the per installation cost and trying to think of unanticipated or anticipated cost overruns. And if this is one of the more challenging areas, as we go through the rest of the town, if it gets quote unquote easier, then this gives us a real sense of what we're opening up in a sense, you know?
That's correct. Yes, that's why, yes, exactly. I agree with that statement. That's why, again, hopefully, once we get through this piece, our findings will show us exactly what's best for us, dollar for dollar, moving forward.
And lastly, and I'm sure you're going to provide this, as far as the residents working with the town and being cooperative in this, I want to get a sense of the percentage rate of folks that are reluctant or don't want to cooperate with the town, because if it's single digits or very low, that's one thing. But if it gets into double digits and we get a significant resistance, that can prove an issue going forward, obviously. But that's something I'd like to know when we get future reports on what's going on.
Exactly, Brian. We reach out to other communities. Erie County, for example, has had a 95% positivity rate in this kind of inspection. So we're curious ourselves because we've never done something this large to see what our response back is going to be. So that's a great unknown, and it's something we will find out in time.
Mhm. Right.
And Brian, as far as like potential cost overruns, I'd like to point out that with all our current contracts to date with the manhole rehab and the lining, in most cases, we've got money back at the end of the contract because we've had contingency built into the contract. And we've had very little in the name of change orders on any of the contracts to date. And in most cases, we're able to get the entire contingency back at the end of the contract.
That's good to hear. It's just my perpetual pessimism coming through there, you know?
That's
But
right, I
thanks,
understand.
Pat.
Right, and we do have a deadline. We have to get back to the DEC by March 1st with part of this, correct?
That's correct,
So,
Diane. Yes, yes.
I think you have to. I think we're all on board. Does anybody object to what the plan is? I don't think we have an option, so. Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming to the meeting and explaining where we are with this. And I have the utmost confidence that we're on the right path. So thank
Thank
you.
you to the board, and we appreciate your support.
All the time. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so Councilmember Hammer would like to talk about the change of the meeting, work sessions and town board meetings. So I put her on as a separate item from before we go over all the resolution items, just to allow them enough time for some discussion, because there's also been some, new ideas presented. So Linda, do you want to talk
Sure.
about where you feel you are with this?
Okay, let me say that I sent out an email to everybody. Some people responded, some people didn't. The consensus is, though, that there's a lot of conflicts with changing these meetings. Brian Pilarski, for one, I know you're busy. You have your board of directors meetings for Seneca Babcock. You also have school board meetings. You have your veterans. You have your library committees. I know you have a family. You have young kids. You have sports with your kids. You also have scouts with your kids. I mean, your schedule's full. And, just using you as an example, I can also use John Duziak. As soon as we go back to traffic court opens up, he's going to have a conflict on the second or the first and third Tuesdays of the month. Kim had a great idea. I thought it would be worth looking at, and that was to have the resolutions due on Tuesday rather than Thursday, and have them posted that day. That way we would have a whole week before our work session where we could contact our department heads or our committee chairs. We could also, another option is to start the work sessions earlier, possibly start them at 4 or 4:30. And we could also move the meeting back a half hour where we could start it at 7:30. I know some towns such as Lancaster, they start theirs at 8. So, I think that would probably be an option too, since our meetings are quite short because of the consent agendas. I know Diane also chimed in and thought that the work sessions, what was I going to say? Yeah, that we could do both the work sessions earlier and the meetings later. And she noticed too that there's many conflicts with committee meetings, homeowners associations, taxpayer groups, and the Democratic committee meetings are also would be a conflict if we did it on a Monday. I spoke with Rich Rusniak. Rich has a conflict with the traffic safety committee, and he also said that, he would be in favor of starting the meetings and the work session earlier for the work session, later for the meetings. I myself, I have 2 committee meetings on the second or on the first and third Mondays or Tuesdays of the month. I belong to the ECEMC, which is the county's Environmental Management Council, which is a very interesting group. And I think that would fall a lot into line with our comprehensive plan. They're very into, ecology and environment, and I really don't want to give that up. And we also have traffic safety the same night, and they use the chamber for their meetings because they're public meetings. So if we, took away the third Tuesday, then we'd have to relocate them someplace else, and I don't know where we would do that. There seems like we as a group have many conflicts, and it would be nice if we could work together to change these. Christine, you yourself said that in your email that you're willing to work with everyone, and hopefully we can come to a happy medium. And I believe that we could keep the work sessions on the same days that they are now with a few modifications. like I said earlier, have the resolutions in by Tuesday and have them posted on Tuesday, giving us a full week before the next work session. We have plenty of time, gives us plenty of time to consult our department heads and committee chairs before the work session and board meeting. Starting the work sessions earlier, 4:30 would give us, I mean, and if we push the meeting back till 7:30, we'd have 3 hours for a work session. I mean, 3 hours for a work session is plenty of time. Plus, we'd have all the resolutions and everybody could have already discussed them with their department heads and chairpersons. Also, our meetings are so short because of the consent agenda. I would hate to put them on a separate day because there really isn't all that much to go over. And even when we do go back to in-person meetings, basically all we're going to add is 15 minutes of time for people to speak before the meeting for agenda items, and then after the meeting for personal comment. I think we also need, I think sometimes our work sessions go on and on forever. I think we need to put a time limit or time frame on for each speaker, which I noticed in some of the old resolutions that you had posted earlier today, Diane.
Yeah,
the
I
work
noticed that,
session.
right. I think
They
that
were very regimented as to how long each speaker or each presenter had as far as, coming to a meeting and doing that. I think we've been a little bit lax and sometimes things just go on too long and we don't need to do that.
and Lisa, and then the speaker would know how long they have.
Correct. And they can adjust their presentation accordingly if they know ahead of time how much time they have. So, I'm thinking that this can be worked out between us. I don't think we have to, stab each other in the back for, having this day or that time or whatever. If we have the resolutions ahead of time and we have the time to speak with our department heads, I don't think there should be any issue at the work sessions. And like I said, we can always go an extra hour if we start them at 4 or 4:30 and start the meeting at 7:30. I mean, there's ways to work this out. So I don't know what you all think, but that's what I've been thinking about. That's just my 2 cents. And, I just wanted to put it out there to let you guys think about it a little bit and decide what we're going to do. Anybody have any comments?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. I'll open
Linda.
it up. Go ahead.
Linda, Jerry, Diane and I had a conversation. I've talked to some of the other people about it too. And might agree with me, you might not. Why did we run for office?
Why?
Yes.
Jerry, either way, we're tending to town business.
Yeah, but I would assume, at least in my mind, that basically being a town board member, running the town comes first. I understand the committees. I understand I'm involved on some other boards, not relative to the town. And this is my opinion. Whenever it is, unless it gets to be before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I will be there no matter what. I've had to do some switching around with some boards that I'm on. But to me,
we all
the
have. Yeah. I mean, our committees change a lot of times every year. We have to make adjustments, but it just seems like people do have a private life too. And you try to make a happy medium out of that, and try to work for the whole committee and see, or for the whole board and see where we can go from that. What's best for everyone.
Well, and as near as I could dig up in the last week or so, the meetings on the off week, I think it goes back 30 years, possibly longer than that. That's as far as I could go back talking to some people. It's worked all those years. And I think the biggest problem is, are we going to continually switching times around? If we state the board meeting starts at 7 o'clock, at the last minute, everything gets cut off. In a lot of cases, I can remember work sessions, and the sad part, it doesn't reflect in the minutes on record, where sometimes we'd start at 6 o'clock, sometimes we're there at 9:30. I remember one that went after 10 o'clock. And the biggest thing, it doesn't show in most of the minutes, there were resolutions discussed, but a lot of it was open discussion too. Issues that somebody might come up with, somebody's got a problem, just general business of the town.
Mhm. Yeah, but
So
I mean,
that's my thought.
with a 3-hour work session, I think we could accommodate that. So I mean, like I said, I'm putting it out there. There were some concerns. I talked to not just the board members, but to Kim and John Duziak, and I don't know about Brian Pilarski, or not Brian Pilarski, Brian Kraus or Karen. I don't know, how any of those feel about it, because they really don't have a vote in this. But it's up to us to make the decision. So it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, I think if we regiment our resolutions and pay attention and try to keep it short, I think we can squeeze a lot more in than we're doing now. We are stretching it out pretty good. I mean, we can tighten this up by paying attention and being more organized.
Well, I also thought of while Brian Culpa was giving his presentation, that could really be on the regular meeting. 'Cause
Sure.
that's how we used to do some of these presentations at the regular meeting. So that's just general information for the public and us too. It's, and we can still ask questions. So we could move some of those bigger presentations on the regular meeting instead of on the work session.
That's a better idea.
Yeah, I emailed you guys all my schedule. It is very busy between family, work, and town and that with all the committee meetings and everything. Tuesdays are wide open for me, anytime after 5 o'clock. So you got me from 5 o'clock until midnight every single Tuesday, whether we go every Tuesday or we do a later board meeting at 7:38. But, Tuesdays are my time I set for meetings for town board, because that's what I came into for the scheduling. So I left that open for everything when trying to schedule my kids'
But-
sports and stuff too.
Okay, but how do we pick, like, you're okay, but then Linda and Rick have Tuesdays where they have traffic safety, and Linda has the EMC, the Erie County meeting on the third Tuesday also. So how
No,
is
I
that?
get that. And that's why I said that, even if we did later starts to board meetings, that would work for me. I cannot do earlier work sessions though.
Okay,
Oh,
so
but
you can't do any sooner than
You
5?
can't do any sooner than 5.
There's meetings that I can't control with other agencies I
Yes.
meet with and all that.
Yeah, we
work until
understand
5.
that.
Yeah.
All right. Because sometimes so sometimes we've had to do a special meeting in between attorney-client privilege. So it seems like we've been able to do that, and we could always add that in between a special meeting if we have a lot to discuss. And I know we've done it before also, so that's also an option. And maybe if we did put the times on the agenda, and like I said, big presentations like, the comprehensive plan could go on the regular meeting, and some of these outside agencies that want to come to us and do a presentation.
I know we schedule the town board meeting, say at 7 o'clock. I mean, in an not emergency, but say we get into something we need to put some time into, can we push that meeting back and just post it? Hey, the meeting's gonna push back to 7:30.
Mhm. But even if we start our meetings,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. Even if we started them at 8, it would help give us more time with the work session. And even if the work session didn't last till 8, it gives us a break to have something to eat before the regular meeting. And we do have the consent agenda, so it also helps us to, it's shorter voting on the issues, but there's more time for discussion. But, I guess I need feedback from everybody here.
I
Simon,
agree.
Chris?
Like Brian said, he kept Tuesdays open, and a lot of people have worked their life that way, because of other commitments that they have. It's just the way it is. I mean, I like the work sessions before the meetings, because it's fresh in your mind, everything you went over, the resolutions, we know what's good and what's not good. And, it's just, to me, it's just a better way to do it, because like I said, everything, you just discuss it. So, I mean, it's not like you're going to have a week in between where you're going to be like, oh yeah, we talked about that last time, So,
Chris, do you have any other comments or? Councilmember Adams, after we can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
I am not in favor of starting work sessions at 4:00. With my recent developments in my personal life, and before that, I mean, I start at 5, I will start at 5, but I'm not gonna start at 4:00. I have things that I need to get in order and things that I gotta do before 5:00. And
Understandable.
I can do it on Mondays. I can do it on Tuesdays. I'm willing to work with the board on any of the days, but I can't do it before 5. I take
Understandable.
care of my mother, and my mother is my priority. She is 80 years old. She recently had a fall, and I need to be there for her. So that's my priority. Yes, I do take the town as my priority, and I'm willing to work with everybody, but I'm just can't do it before 4:00.
And that's understandable. And would you be willing
So-
to move the meeting
well, you
later?
could, anybody else? I mean, we
Hmm.
still could accommodate you by starting at 5 and changing the meeting till 8. You know what I mean? There's still ways to do this.
Brian
Yeah,
Pilar
Linda.
said the same thing. Yeah, he couldn't start till 5 anyway. So, and I know Jerry has a business.
So the main thing, I think the reason why this was brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the fact that we're not getting enough time to review the material. So no matter what time we start, a Tuesday meeting is a Tuesday meeting. It comes down to when we're getting the agenda items in our hand and when we're able to touch base with department heads and get more information on things and not cram it all into one day. That was the whole purpose of it being brought up.
Correct.
But
But
that's why
if
we
you,
put-
Brian, if you get the resolutions the Tuesday before the meeting, don't you think you would have enough time to, talk to department heads or committee
Absolutely.
chairs?
I'm game for trying anything new. I just know what we're doing right now is not working, and I feel others can agree on that it's not
is
enough
not
time to get it
working.
on a Thursday, afternoon or even late Thursday, depending on when things are turned in. That's not working right now. So something new, I'm all for it.
Yeah, the reason we're discussing this, there's two reasons that are driving this. We're not getting the resolutions soon enough to give us time to talk to department heads, do our research. That's been a common concern for board members. And the other reason is we don't have enough time to do our business. The supervisor mentioned that we're having attorney-client privilege meetings and other kind of meetings on the off weeks already. So we're already in a position where we're doing some of these meetings in between our bi-weekly meetings to deal with our business. And what I found is that when we're doing that, we're cooperating better, we're solving problems better, we're working better together. We've got our differences of opinion. We might not like each other all the time, but we're getting the town's work done when we are working together more frequently. I think Councilman Kaminsky mentioned it. We all take a check from the town, and I fully understand the other obligations. Family comes before everything. I agree with that too, but we ran for this job, and we're doing the work for the residents. We're the representatives here, and if it means getting together once a week instead of once every other week, I'm absolutely fine with that. If it has to be 4:00 instead of 5, it's a minor inconvenience for me. I will make it work. I will start at 8:00 instead of 7. I'm fine with that. If I have to miss committee meetings, I will miss those. But we've got to do something that we get the resolutions earlier and we have more time to talk. If we do move the meetings back to 8:00, 3 hours might be sufficient, but moving back just to 7:30, if we continue to start at 5, that's a problem. And we have to keep in mind that if we move to 8:00 in the evening, we've got some advantages right now. We've been video recording these meetings and streaming them and putting them on YouTube, so the residents can see the decisions we're making, the discussions we're having. So regardless of where we move these meetings, as long as we keep doing that, they can participate. They've got our emails and our phone numbers. They can reach out to us with their concerns. And that's an advantage of what the clerk suggested, getting the resolutions a week early, the Tuesday instead of the Thursday. That gives the residents more time to take a look at what's on our agenda and how they feel about things. That gives them more time to reach out to us. So if it's given to us on a Tuesday, it should be given to the public on a Tuesday as well. You think there's a couple hours in between where it's, it's put online and then it's put public a couple hours later, and that's fine. You need time to make sure that everything is fine. But if we do it Tuesday for us, let's do it Tuesday for the public. And with all the conflicts, it involves, the town attorney, the town clerk's conflicts. I mean, there's a lot of people that have to clear their schedules to get here too. So if we make another switch, this idea of doing the first and third Monday and the second and fourth Tuesday is the one that I prefer the most. But I hear that there's some opposition to that one. There's opposition to doing every Tuesday. We're just not going to get to a place where all 7 of us agree with the solution. But whatever we do, we need to get the resolution sooner, and there needs to be more time in between the work session and the regular board meeting, because 2 hours, and I felt this way from the moment that I've gotten on the board. And the first time we discussed this, I moved that resolution. It's why I agreed with Adamczyk to sponsor this as a second and help move this debate along. 2 hours is not enough time because things always come up.
And I agree with you, Brian. And I do agree. I mean, when we brought this resolution up, I thought work sessions on Mondays, board meetings on Tuesdays. Some of us agree, some of us don't. And now we are, I mean, a board of 7, we have to come and we have to compromise. Do I wish we were doing work sessions on Mondays and board meetings on Tuesday? Yes. Is it going to happen? Sounds like it's not going to happen. So now we have to come up with another solution. I hope
Chris,
that we all can work with.
all right, it sounds like everybody might be okay with trying the 3-hour work session and, put the board meeting at 8:00 because our board meetings are pretty short. So, a 3-hour work session, I think probably would be enough time. I mean, for us to get to the town business. If indeed there was something big that came up, we can always call a special meeting. I mean, and that's, at short notice, and that's only a one-time thing. It's only when things come up that are essential to be looked at right away. But also with getting the resolutions a week early, I think that's a great idea, having them posted, like Brian said, and having them up for the public. That's another great idea. I think there's ways we can work around this.
Yeah, and again, I understand Linda's point. If we move back to 8:00, as long as we're video recording and we've been video recording and live streaming these for months now.
Right.
We can continue to do that once COVID's done and we're back to meeting in council chambers, video recording and live streaming meetings for the public. So if somebody can't make it at 8:00 because that's too late instead of 7, I think it's more important that the 7 board members get all the time they need to do the town's business. We've got ways for the public to reach out to us, and they've got a way to watch what we're doing and hold us accountable in watching our conduct. So in that sense, whatever times we choose would be just fine. And, there are a lot of conflicts. Every other alternative that's coming up about moving these to every single Tuesday or the Monday and Tuesday thing, it seems like somebody's coming up with a conflict. Again, that something's in the way of that. Maybe if we were to do the Monday and Tuesday every week, starting the regular board meeting on the Mondays at 8:00. I know it's a little late. I think things like court should be cleared up. A lot of these other meetings in the early evening should be cleared up. Maybe that's a way we can go down the road. If we can't get everybody on board with that, maybe just moving the meeting back to 8:00. That does give us another hour.
I think that I would be willing to try that, because when we had our regular meetings anyway, we never got done before 8:00, very rarely. When we didn't have the consent agenda and we were in council chambers, it started at 7 and it would still run till 8:30, sometimes 9.
We run a 9:30 in some of the meetings.
We did, yes. So I don't mind starting the regular meeting at 8 or even 8:30 with the consent agenda. Or like I said, maybe we'll try to do some of these better presentations for the regular meeting too, if we wanted to.
Let's try a test run. Let's give it a whirl. Get the things in on Tuesday, the Tuesday before, stretch the meeting out. Let's try it. And and see, and then we might have to tune it up from there. But you gotta start somewhere, or we're gonna talk
I
about it all
agree.
night.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, and I think you and I discussed it, Diane, all it is a matter of getting the resolutions in. It's changing a timeline. It's
Mhm.
nothing that's critical. There's always something that's gonna come up that's gonna have to go on a waivers, no matter what we do. You know,
You're right.
it's bound to happen. There's emergencies that do come up. But the
Right.
biggest thing, and I think it was Brian mentioned it, even with some of the special meetings we had, you know what the biggest difference is? We actually talk to each other.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing, the way I look at it. And even for the years that I've been on a board, there were certain select resolutions that we would review if it was relative to litigation or hiring a legal firm or whatever. Not all resolutions were discussed at the work sessions. And in a lot of cases, and Diane and I had a conversation about this.
Mhm.
I'll ask everybody this. What's one of the biggest things under Robert's Rule of Orders we never talk about?
New and old
Nobody-
business.
Yeah, new business, old business, right?
Mhm.
What's left laying on the shelf that we forgot about?
Mhm. Yeah,
Nobody-
but there have,
nobody can
I
answer
mean,
that.
the design of the agenda, I mean, that's been like you said, 30 years. We've followed the same design. So if you want to design the agenda differently, I'm open to that too.
No, I don't even think it's a matter of the agenda. And Diane, I think you know my feelings about it. I was elected as a town council member. Sure, there's committees. I've been involved in a lot of stuff. I've had to do switching around over the years. Doesn't bother me in the least.
Mhm.
But the town is my priority. And I'm not throwing stones at any other department. It's immaterial what it is, what other boards you might serve on. I'm on a couple other ones too. But I try not to let it interfere with my first responsibility, which is being a councilman for the town of Chickawaga.
Mhm.
But I kind of consider
Maybe I'm
that,
taking that the wrong
Both.
way, but my family is number one.
right.
No,
No,
you're
I
right.
agree with that, Brian. I agree with that.
Yeah.
No doubt about
Well-
that. It's always number one.
Yes, my
what-
family is number one, Jerry. Yes.
So what do we
That's
do?
priority, sorry.
Yep.
So what are we gonna do tonight?
Well, yeah, because we do have a resolution on the table for tonight's regular meeting. So, is everybody open to amending that? Somewhat to reflect some of the discussion tonight? Or do you
Yeah.
want to vote on this resolution as is? Because I'm not a mover on it. It would have to be Chris or Brian. Or somebody could amend it at the board meeting, anybody.
Well, you could put Linda's name on it. She tabled it and she came up with this, so you can go ahead and put Linda's name on it.
Well, we can't, no, it's a tape, so Linda could amend it, she could make a motion to amend it.
I could
And,
do that.
and that resolved area, you could say that the town board hereby establishes that town board meetings will be held on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, starting at 8 o'clock instead of 7 in that resolution,
Right.
in the council chambers, and work sessions will be held at 5 o'clock instead of the first and third Tuesday of the month. Take that out, starting at 5 o'clock before a regular meeting.
Yeah, on the second floor.
And then we could add another resolved about all resolutions
Resolutions.
need to be in to Minitrack or will be posted at noon on the Tuesday before a regular meeting. Does
Right.
that sound good, Brian Noack, or an other?
I think the second part of that should be in here. That's a great idea to just make sure we get the language on the resolutions into minute track by 10 a.m. on Tuesday. And it's got to be live to the public by noon on Tuesday.
I
I
knew
think both of
on the
those
Tuesday
specifications
before a regular meeting.
should be
Right.
here. I mean, as far where I am right now, the amendments I would make as far as the times would be to have the regular meetings on the first and third Mondays at 8 p.m. and then to do the work sessions on the second, fourth Tuesdays at 5. That's just me personally, and I don't know if that works for
Yeah,
everybody else.
It's
But-
fine with,
Me, I've got board meetings for my
Yeah.
employer, and then my wife's a school board member, which is on the other Monday.
See, then we run into everybody has a conflict once we start trying to add another day.
I
in.
like the amendments that were just put forward. I think we have nothing to lose to try it. We're already carved out those Tuesdays.
Yes,
Right.
it seems
already.
like the
So
second and fourth Tuesday works for everybody. There's no conflicts for any other board members on those days. So if you want to try 5 o'clock, starting the regular meeting, and then, so Madam Clerk, I don't know, and we'll do this at the regular meeting too. So if we started the second and fourth Tuesday of each month, starting at 8, and the work sessions would be held at 5 o'clock before the regular meeting.
Yeah, prior to the meeting.
And
right.
then we have to add another resolve. like
About the,
about all
right.
the resolutions need to be submitted into minute track by 10 a.m. the Tuesday before the regular meeting.
Hey, Diane, this is Pat.
Yes.
I just wanted to point out that if you move it up to Tuesday, really, you're looking at 4 business days for all the department heads to get their resolutions in for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the thought process, I mean, like, I'm guessing by talking to Kim that there aren't many resolutions put in like this week. They all would be getting in, I think, on Wednesday and Thursday of next week, I think.
Well, you're just going to have to mark on your calendar a different day they're due, and you'll be all done then. So
It's only gonna happen for 1 week, then
Yeah.
it'll catch
That's
up.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'd have
Wait a
one
week.
week problem.
right, there
Everybody's
would
gonna
be.
buckle down for a week and then it'll catch up.
Yeah, so there might be some last straight. So you just in your calendar, you say, okay, that Tuesday before now, I got to think ahead a little bit and make sure those resolutions are in on Tuesday and not on Thursday.
Yeah, I
Don't-
would anticipate in the short run that we would either have a shorter regular meeting agenda or we would have more waiver items as folks adjust. I
As folks
recommended 2
adjust.
weeks ago the idea of giving the department heads some time to adjust to it. But
Mhm.
if we're willing to do more waivers, I think that's a way we can go about this, helping them to adjust. I would like to have an amendment too. I can go along with the second and fourth Tuesdays, 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock, as long as there's an additional amendment that clarifies, because we already have the resolution that we're video recording. As long as we have an additional amendment that the live streaming will be permanent, because we've been doing that for a year already.
Mhm.
And I know there were concerns expressed about that in the past. If we can get the live streaming done on a permanent basis, I'll agree to go along the second and fourth Tuesdays, 5 and 8 o'clock, the times.
Well, okay, so let's add 2 resolves then. The extra resolved would be that all resolutions must be submitted into minute track by 10 a.m. the Tuesday before the regular board meeting.
Right.
And we would go live by noon somehow, have to put that wordage in. And then another resolve that furthermore,
In addition to video recording that we agreed to in the past, that we
Yes.
will add live streaming as on a permanent basis.
all meetings
Will be video
Will be-
recorded and live.
and live streamed. Yep.
will be video recorded and live streamed. I hope, Madam Clerk, you're on here getting all this.
I'm listening, but I would suggest that you write it up and we can email all the changes before the town board meeting starts. Everybody can look at it quick, so we have a final
don't know if
draft
we're
for
gonna
everyone to
have-
review.
I don't know if we're gonna have time to do that. I'll try to do that.
Yeah, it's 6:28 now.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, this is just case in point, and exactly. I mean, we spent a half hour on a topic, and it's just one topic. We still have to go
Yeah.
through the resolution items, then get the changes over to the clerk, and the clerk get them back on exactly why we need to make this change.
I agree with you, Councilmember Pilarski. I think it's worth trying anyway. And then, like I said, if we have to do a meeting in between, then we're not kind of strapped into the second or the third Tuesday or Wednesday or Monday. We always send out an email, all right, what works for you? So we're trying to accommodate everybody if we have to have a separate meeting in between. So anyway, I'll try to type something up and get it to everybody in the next half hour, but we got to go through the rest of the resolutions.
When do we dare discuss meeting in person again in the chambers?
Yeah, well, as soon as we can get through this COVID, I think that we can do that, but I think we have too many cases at Town Hall and at Alexander, and there's just too many people still. I mean, I'm not gonna put anybody at risk. If we can continue to do it now this way, I think it's working fine, and everybody, I mean, think we worked out the kinks, didn't we? As far as the first month or two.
As far as Zoom.
Yes. And at least it's on the YouTube. So everybody can just sit back and relax and watch it on TV. They don't even.
Right.
So anyway, so if we go through the resolution items, we just discussed possibly amending resolution 1 that was tabled. And then on the consent agenda, the warrant is resolution 1. Did anybody have any questions on that? The CIR electric vehicle change order number 1, that was one of Pat Bowen's. Did anybody have any questions for Pat Bowen? Okay. Resolution 3 is for the call for the public hearing for our 2020 annual action plan that Rachel has presented to us. Any questions? Rachel's on tonight. A lot of these are pretty standard, like all these notice to bidders. We have a few resolutions. Notice to bidders. So I'll go through these. Stop me if you have a question. Topsoil and hydroseed, manhole and catch basin frames and covers, sanitary sewer pipe fittings, town-wide tree removal, concrete installation, equipment and operators for public works projects. Okay, those are all the notice to bidders. Are there any questions? We do have, a lot of them are coming from engineering. We have Pat Bowen here, so we can ask him while he's here before we vote. And then we have approval of the 2019 annual action plan. Is this different, Rachel?
Yeah, so the public hearing that we're calling for is the substantial amendment for the round 3 of CARES Act funding.
Okay.
And then the approval, it should actually be 2021 action plan. I believe we made the change yesterday, I believe.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, this has been for me. This was the original. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
so
that's okay.
So
So
it says 20. Yeah, it made no sense. 2019. but-
yeah, so the approval of the 2021 action plan was based on the last public hearing that we had.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that's okay. So we got, and the next resolution is the return of unused baseball and softball equipment from Barnabas. I know Jill worked hard on trying, actually it was kind of a gift that they have given us to give us back the equipment they're not using anymore. Did anybody have any questions?
Questions I had were addressed.
Okay.
And Brian Nowak, just to get back to you on that, I apologize that I didn't email today, but I did hear back from Barnabas that they're going to get together on the 20th of February and they're going to create that inventory list for us on that date. So I will have that at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so next resolution, retain foreign language interpreters and translators. This is a standard resolution we have every year. Any questions on that? Okay, approve Clark Patterson Lee for planning and engineering review. This is related to the Young Development Project at 6386 Transit Road. It's pretty self-explanatory, but the Young Development will be reimbursing the town then for, because they wanted an expedited review. Okay, next resolution is on regarding 275 Alexander Avenue restrictive covenant. This is Rachel, this was about your flood insurance map or?
Yes, so as part of the elevator project and providing funding for that, Because part of the property is in a flood zone, HUD just wanted a restrictive covenant, a promise that we will not develop that property that's in the flood zone.
Oh, no. It's not a good
Okay.
idea. You get a
Okay. So the next one is Angela's house, the home loan agreement. We talked about this at, I think, the last meeting. So this is the resolution we need to pass. 16 is the execute the final contract acceptance documents with the institute form. This is again for the DEC consent order. 17 is special inspection and testing for geotechnical and structural construction services. 18 is the intermunicipal agreement between the town and the town of West Seneca relative to the use of the police department firing range. You have the chief here if anybody has any questions. 19 is the engineering planning grant application. Again, we got Pat Bone here if anybody has any questions on that.
And Diane, I'll take resolution 20. This is Karen Marchese.
Okay.
Resolution 20 is a routine hiring of a part-time employee in the police department, a student assistant, Nolan Witt. Resolution 21 is the authorization of student interns, Amanda Dreyer of North Tonawanda, Cassandra Cable of Cheektowaga, Michaela Ricks of Cuba, New York, Marissa Palmioto of Rome, New York, and Nicole Benzink of Cheektowaga, and David Overhoff of Lawtons, New York. Will all be wish to participate in internships in the police department. And those are the hiring resolutions for tonight.
Okay. And then we do have, I think, 4 items under the waiver items. This was for Angela's house again, the pilot we were talking to with Jill Murphy about, and she's on. If anybody has any questions. And then we have the natural disaster coordinator hiring of Mike Mazarowski and the hiring of the assistant natural disaster services coordinator, Jason Tolzman. Anybody have any questions on that? They're both very excited to start working for the town in these new positions. So, you know, with Earl gone. And then the last one is the signing, giving the authorization to sign the agreement for Diamond Hawk that John Dujak put in at the last minute. Did everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Pat Bowen still here?
Go ahead. Who?
Pat Bowen still here?
I think oh, here he is. Pat?
Yep.
You're
Pat,
being
can
summoned.
you email me some dates and times we can meet?
Yes.
Okay.
Diane, real quick.
Yes.
Can you just clarify regarding the COVID cases that you mentioned? Are there COVID cases right now at town hall?
I don't know for a fact of town hall, but some of our workers that move about the different buildings. Yes.
Okay.
So,
And I will add that I'm not sure whether those cases were contracted at town hall or at a town building. So it's not as if we have an infestation or anything like that at town hall or Alexander. We're taking the utmost of safety precautions regarding those. So
Okay.
I don't know that there's been any town-based contracting of COVID-19 at this point.
Okay.
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 And we're
Thank
just
you.
trying to
You're
err
welcome.
on the safety side, and I'm a little concerned because February break's coming and a lot of people have plans to go to Florida, and that is one of the states that really nobody wears masks. So I don't know what's going to happen to that in our town. So I think we all are in agreement. Our priority is to keep our workers and everybody safe coming into town hall or any town building. So
Supervisor, I'm sorry to do this. I've been thinking about resolution 13. Is there another council member that would like to become the mover on that item?
13.
13 is, anybody else want to, if Brian wants his name off there, I could move it. Would somebody second it?
What is it about, Diane?
It's regarding that Clark Patterson Lee agreement for the expedited plan review for the Young Development Project on Transit.
I
And
will.
I have questions on that development.
oh, so Brian Pilarski, will you said
Yeah.
you would second it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be the mover and Madam Clerk, and then if you could put Councilmember Pilarski as the second.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Supervisor.
Okay, sure, I understand. So, but Councilmember Pilarski is the second on it. I mean, we have Pat, do we have? I don't have anybody here about that project.
It's okay.
Well, there's another step in addition to this. We still would have to approve a site plan down the road. So this isn't the end all be all of things. I just don't want my name on it right now.
Okay, yeah, this is, about trying to get this development going quick, later, and they had agreed to reimburse the town for getting this done quickly.
Right. We talked about this
Mhm.
prior to today, so I understand, what we're doing here.
And I understand too, Brian, thank you. All right, so,
Thanks, Linda, for putting hold on. Thanks, Linda, for putting your name on that resolution.
wait a minute, no, it's Brian
What?
Pilarski.
No, I'm talking about the other resolution, about the meetings.
Oh, okay, so,
Whatever.
all right, for the work session, resolution 2021-58, that was tabled. I'm not sure if she can put her name on it now that it was tabled.
No, she
I,
can't put her name on it. She's gonna have to call for the amendment.
Yes,
You're gonna
okay,
have to call for the amendment when we bring it up, and then we'll read off whatever the amendment is to be
Okay.
applied, and then you can vote on it that way.
so that's what I was gonna say is I'm gonna take, what we do is after the regular meeting, we have to go into executive session. So,
Correct.
so the board members should know that after the regular meeting, we'll go into executive session, no action to follow. And it will take this few minutes to try to type up something. So look for your emails and see if you're okay with that amendment. And if not, we can work on at least something so we can see it all before the meeting starts.
Okay.
So I'll try to, based on our conversations, and we might have to change it, okay?
Okay.
Everybody all right with that then?
yep,
Okay. So we will end the work session now and come back for the regular meeting.
Well, Diana, I got just one comment
Oh, yes.
on the, town tree removal. I know it's a necessity because of the
Mhm.
sewer problems, but we got to work on replanting.
Mhm.
This is it seems to have gone to the wayside. We really got to start reforesting our town.
Mhm.
That's just another thing we got to look at.
I agree with you. We really do. And I think there are some funds. There's a fund there. I know
There is.
Linda always asks about it every year.
Yep.
There's one in the
It's
highway.
there, but I
But
don't
there's
know why.
also another one that Brian Kraus has access to. So we're going to have,
To
You make-
Councilman
Highway.
Wozniak's concern, I did bring up with the folks on the comprehensive plan committee that we have an urban forestry plan that we
Mhm.
talked about a few years ago. And I made them aware of that. I can present a copy to all the folks on the comp plan committee,
Mhm.
but that urban forestry plan should be part of our comprehensive plan for the
Yes, it
next,
should.
I think it
we
is,
already
isn't it?
agreed to- What's that?
Brian, isn't it? I think it is, isn't it? Part of our comprehensive plan?
I did bring it up to Camille Brandon when we spoke previously about this. I would imagine it's going to be referenced at some point or included in that in some manner. I requested that be the case. But we just have to act on it. We've got to replant.
It's a good plan too.
Mhm.
Very well written.
Yes, I
Just
I
make
like,
it happen.
right. So we'll talk about that. Anybody else? But I agree with the tree planting, but I'm going to have to get off. So if you guys want to talk, but I'm going to try to get this amended resolution together. Okay. We're running out of
Okay.
time.
Do we have to go executive? We're going at the end now?
And at the end, yes, so I have time to try to
Okay.
find it. Okay, thanks, everyone.
right.
I'm going to leave the meeting
Okay.
right now.
Okay.